Your Honor, if you've read my letter already, I'm not going to put you through having to listen to it all again. And
no, feel free. This is your day. This is your day in court. This is your day in court. If you so desire, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I will just kind of, I guess, skim over some of the things because my husband really touched on a lot of those. But what I did say to you in my letter was that I didn't want to write this letter. My attorney, Chris, told me that it would be a good idea. And the reason I didn't want to write it is because I don't feel right about asking for mercy or empathy or any of that. This whole thing has humbled me. I just didn't even know that it was possible to be humbled as much as I've been humbled. And the remorse that I have and the guilt that I have that has occurred from that one very poor decision is what I want to talk to you about, is the way that it's affected my family and how undeserving they are. My lawyers told me that you're fair and reasonable, and I told you in my letter that I'm prepared for whatever justice you deem appropriate. But I do want to share with you how my consequences, the consequences of what I did, my mistake, and how it affected my family and mostly my children. I mean, it's affected all of us and my husband, but the kids are the innocent ones, and I just want to make you aware of what they've gone through. This incident occurred over 8 months ago, but my children just still continue to suffer the indignities that were caused by what I did. I think they're continually embarrassed. They're continually chastised and mocked. Each of my 3 children have lost nearly every friend that they've had. Their kids, they basically the parents of the kids that used to be friends with, no longer, permitted them to associate with us because of me. And, I know that that's because of what they saw, on that video. And I would have probably made the very same decision and not let my kids associate with somebody who did that as well. So I can't fault them for that. But the problem, that goes along with that is it's heartbreaking to see your kids struggle for something that you did. My daughter, she's only 7. She's pretty much, she's like me. She's an extrovert. She's very social.
Mrs. Hunter.
I'm sorry?
Mrs. Hunter, slow down and breathe, okay? What's written in your letter is a lot more fluid, and you're leaving out critical details. So take your time and go through it.
If that's what you want me to do, I will just read it. It's easier for me because this is very emotional.
Okay, do that.
Okay. It's heartbreaking to see my young daughter struggle with the loss of her friends and her limited understanding of why she can no longer play with them. My other 2 children have more insight into their loss, so there's no need for that constant explanation. In the past few months, my children collectively decided that they would no longer divulge their last name to anyone new that they met. And this decision came to fruition after multiple occasions in which a parent or a teacher or a peer would connect the dots that ultimately led back to their ties to that woman in the video. My children no longer engage in any type of team sports or otherwise, just to avoid meeting anyone new. But a couple of months ago, a new family did move into the neighborhood, and a boy the same age as my middle child pursued a friendship with him. And my son was very reluctant to befriend him given his past experiences. But I encouraged him anyway, and eventually he gave in and they became fast friends. For several weeks, my son was happy and almost carefree. They spent every weekend together. They had sleepovers, they built forts, and they just had fun being boys. My husband and I were hopeful, but then it stopped. The boys stopped coming over, and my son was heartbroken again. My eldest son was just starting high school when the social media frenzy was at its peak. There were thousands of posts, pages, and links being spread, tweeted, and shared all throughout our small town. And in the midst of it all, my son had to start high school, a brand new school where he knew no one and had no friends. And it's difficult enough to be an adolescent and starting high school as the new kid, but to do so during this tumultuous time and under the microscope of a small town made it nearly unbearable for my son, who was already an introvert. Like any normal 15-year-old, he just wanted to fit in and be accepted. Instead, he was shunned. His classmates would boldly ask him, and purposefully in the midst of a small crowd, if his mother was that lady in the video. It was like he was the son of the woman who wore the scarlet letter. And although he tries to hide his emotions from me to avoid I'm sorry, Judge.
Okay.
Just give me a minute. The reason that this part is so raw and emotional for me is because the last time I was in court, afterwards, the media was, the story, it just was more prevalent. I got a lot more text messages and all of that kind of stuff. But the reason that this particular part is so emotional for me is because right after that, my son was taken out of class and brought into the counselor's office. And they basically said, we saw your mom and we just want to make sure that you're okay. You know, we know you can't talk to your mom or you can't talk to your dad, you know, and we just want to make sure that you're okay. And I just think that having my letter go public and having his teachers read it and his guidance counselor and, you know, just everybody, it just made it that much more worse for him. And that's why this particular part of my letter is so hard for me, because this just happened and I'm just having a really hard time with it, because he did come home and he did try to just brush it off like it was no big deal. But my husband and I, for the next 2 or 3 days, we just kept asking him, you know, Tate, what's wrong? Tate, what's wrong? He wouldn't tell us, but we knew what was wrong. And so that's just been really hard. I just wanted to explain why this particular part is so difficult because of what just happened with that. But anyway, just give me a minute. So his classmates, I told you, would ask him if I was that lady in the video, and I mentioned the whole thing about the scarlet letter. I'm sorry. He tries to hide his emotions from me to avoid adding to my guilt. But I know that my son is broken because a mother always knows when her children are hurting. And my son is very lonely. The few longtime friends he had at the small private school he attended during elementary and middle school have been forbidden to continue the friendship with him. This was after a classmate distributed the video throughout the entire academy. It was sent to every teacher, every student, every parent, and the entire office staff. And those two longtime friends, he had decided to add salt to the wound by removing him from the group chat that he and his classmates had been part of for 5 years while in school together. My son is trying to cope, but it would be a lie to say that he has not been permanently damaged by all of this unwanted and unwarranted attention. He has surely suffered the most of my 3 children. We are currently involved in counseling. Additionally, we are trying to enroll my son in a Jacksonville high school in hopes that he might walk those hallways without staring at the ground. We did just learn that he was denied access into that high school, so he's going to continue going to this school. The lives of my kids have been drastically altered.
Why was he denied access? You know?
It was an art school that he auditioned for.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay.
And
not related to this. Okay.
No, I'm sorry, no. But related to it in the fact that he has to go back to the school where he has the notoriety.
Okay.
The lives of my kids have been drastically altered, and it's especially evident in our small community in which everyone knows everyone. Ours was that house where all the neighborhood kids would gather to play, meet up, and just hang out. And I remember looking out the window one day and counting 13 children playing in our yard. But now there are only 2 children, and both belong to me. I used to be that mom. I was the nucleus of all the other moms. I was the one who introduced this mom to that mom, the one who planned the neighborhood gatherings, and the one who pulled everybody together at the community pool or for a barbecue. I think my kids enjoyed being the kids of that mom. But as soon as I went from that mom to that woman, that semi-idyllic life came to a screeching halt for my kids. Fortunately, the Vede family, Amanda, who you met earlier, has allowed our children to maintain a friendship with their children, and for that we are incredibly grateful. But my kids have been devastated by the loss of their friends and the life they once had. They used to ride their bikes around the neighborhood with their friends. Now they just watch those same kids ride around without them. They used to go to our community pool with their friends. Now they're not invited. Their weekends used to be filled with sleepovers and birthday parties and outings, and now their weekends are spent indoors and in the company of their electronic devices and virtual friends. My younger son asked me just the other day if I would get in touch with the mother of one of his old friends. He said, "Mommy, I'm sure she isn't mad at you anymore." But I couldn't reach out to her. I knew what her answer would be. There was no forgiveness, no forgetting, and she had not changed her mind. And just yesterday, my sweet daughter, our happy mistake, asked if I would write a note to the mother of her new best friend. She asked me to try and set up a play date for her. And I did write the letter. I will tell you that we were in communication. And then after this last hearing, when it was all over the news again, I haven't heard from her again. My daughter keeps asking me about it. And, I do try to make her understand, but I just don't know how to do that. I'm aware that my shame and regret will follow me the rest of my life. We often run into people we have known in the past. And because it's such a small town, that's a very frequent occurrence. I watch as my kids lower their heads and turn the opposite direction so they won't be recognized or approached. And I know exactly what they're feeling because I do the same thing. I've avoided teachers they have had in the past, as well as their current teachers. I avoid old friends, parents of my kids' friends, their coaches, our doctors, our veterinarian, our realtor, my hairstylist, people that we hired for various reasons, and the list goes on and on. As a family, we collectively avoid anyone we recognize for fear that they might know. We no longer patronize the locally owned stores and restaurants where people know us. We no longer socialize with anyone except for the handful of friends from our church who you met, most of them today, and who thankfully chose not to judge us, me. We no longer take our family bike rides around the neighborhood. We no longer wave at the neighbors passing by. We no longer make small talk with anyone while working in our yard. And it's clear that the majority of our neighbors no longer wish to associate with us on even the smallest of levels. I frequently tell my children that although gossip spreads like a wildflower on a windy day, eventually it will subside. But the truth is, I don't actually believe the reassurance I'm trying to provide. My kids are diligent in trying to hide it, but the bottom line is they're ashamed and embarrassed of me. The reality is that my family has been permanently scarred. And although that scar might fade over time, it will never completely disappear. My kids should not have to pay the price for my mistake. And I can overcome the ostracization. I can't even say this word. Ostracization. I wrote it, but I can't say it. I deserve it. My children do not. And although I am able to rationalize and even reconcile all of this, my children cannot. They have been greatly affected by the thousands of text messages, emails, phone calls, postings, threats, and even hand-delivered letters. How could they not? They live in the same house with the person to whom all of this venom is directed. It settles like dust around our home. You can't really see it, but you know it's there. And it is unreasonable and unrealistic to think they wouldn't be permanently damaged. They are children. They see, they hear, and they witness everything, and they just want it to stop. Judge Ruth, I could provide you with so many more details and incidents surrounding my family, as well as the magnitude and depth of the ongoing backlash that my mistake has caused my entire family to endure. And it's been wider and further reaching than any of us could have imagined. It's crept into every crevice of our lives. My children, my husband, my 83-year-old mother, my siblings, members of my extended family, and so many others have been tainted, harassed, threatened, and shamed. And I know that there's been a lot of fallout for Ms. Sprague as well, and likely for her family as well. I was and I am a very private person. I have never had an appetite for social media. The only purpose Facebook ever served in my life was to upload photos of my kids to share with family and friends. The full intention of my letter, Judge Ruth, is to provide you with a very small glimpse into the lives of my family. And what I have shared in this letter is really just the tip of the iceberg. And though it is very raw and surreal, what I have shared has sadly become our reality, and I don't want to be responsible for any more grief and strife from my family. My mistake will continue to affect all of us in some shape or form for the rest of our lives. I often wonder what it would be like if every one of us, as the flawed human beings we are, had their worst moments reduced to a short video for all the world to see and judge. And I would just like to add to that, that I think the hardest part of this is that that video shows me in the worst possible light on my worst possible day. And that's not who I am. That's not who I was before, and it certainly isn't who I am now. And if I could take it all back, I obviously would take it all back. You know, my husband's analogy with the bubble and the balloon, that's exactly what happened. It just kept, everything just kept piling on and piling on and piling on. And I just kept trying to push it down. And I just, that day, the pin just stuck in the balloon. And unfortunately for Miss Sprague, you know, she was the recipient of that. And for that, I apologize. And I believe that she knows that, because I did express that to her in my letter that I sent her very soon after.
You sent her a letter?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I have no further questions for Ms. Hunter at this time.